The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 140, Michigan versus South Carolina. On today's show, we preview the Outback Bowl.
Oh man, Euchre's been broadcasting for 27 years. I have never seen anything like this. They need 2 inches. Dennis Franklin, the quarterback, taking a long con from center. He hands off to Shuttlesworth 5, and it's down to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Dennis Franklin! Oh my God, Dennis Franklin fooled everybody. He fooled me. He fooled the entire Ohio State team. Kneeling is Larry Gustafson. Attempting will be Super Toe. Super Toe will kick the 30-yard field goal. It's kicked and sent over end. It's a tied-up ball game. 10-10. Okay. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Carter has it. Carter's got it. Oh my God! Carter scored. Look at those Wolverine. 95 Wolverine going in the end zone. Carter's got the pass. In the air, it's done. Buford is going out of his mind. I have never seen anything like this in all my 40 years of covering Michigan football.
This is the Michigan Man Podcast. On GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. For Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Happy New Year and Go Blue. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. On part 2 of our Outback Bowl preview, we have 2 guests. First, we'll hear from Scott Hood, who is the feature writer for the South Carolina site Gamecock Central. After that, we'll get the Michigan perspective on the game from Michael Spath, associate editor at the Wolverine. On our view from Section 17 today, it's our last show of the year, and as you might expect, our focus today will be on football. Starting next week, we'll do a final wrap-up show on the football season, and then start paying attention to what promises to be an action-filled start to the new year. Next week, men's and women's basketball will get the Big Ten portion of their schedules underway. We'll also see if Coach Red Berenson and the guys will be able to turn the season around, compete in the CCHA, and make another record-setting run at the NCAA tournament. And believe it or not, in just 5 short weeks, Michigan softball and baseball will be gearing up to open another season with trips down south. So, as always, we'll have plenty to talk about, and we hope you will join us each week. On our view from Section 17 today, a few interesting tidbits about tomorrow's game. This will be the 3rd meeting between Michigan and South Carolina. Michigan has compiled a 7-4 record all-time against the Southeastern Conference in bowl games. The most recent bowl matchup with the SEC came in the 2011 Gator Bowl, a 52-14 loss to Mississippi State on New Year's Day. Prior to that meeting, U of M earned a 41-35 victory over Florida in the 2008 Capital One Bowl. U of M has a 23-7-1 all-time record against schools from the SEC. We all probably know a little bit about our Outback Bowl opponent, the South Carolina Gamecocks. But coming up next is a guy who'll fill in all the blanks for us. Our guest on today's visitor segment is Scott Hood, the beat writer who covers South Carolina for the site Gamecock Central. Here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. With us today on our visitor segment is Scott Hood, who covers South Carolina for GamecockCentral.com, part of the Rivals.com family. Scott, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me on today.
So, Scott, both of the teams, as we record this on Thursday morning, arrived in Tampa. I guess Michigan's been there since Sunday, of course. South Carolina just got there, I believe, Wednesday afternoon sometime, wasn't it?
They did. They arrived yesterday afternoon. We had the team welcome dinner here in Tampa last night. With both teams attended, both athletic directors and both coaches were there. Had a great time. Great food from Outback Steakhouse, and looks like both teams are ready to go. I talked with the players, and they're very eager to play this game. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's one of the best, if not the best, game on New Year's Day. And I know the players and everyone around this game is pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very good matchup. When the bowl pairings were announced up here in Big Ten country, everyone gets a little nervous when we play an SEC team because we sort of hear about that a lot over the last 10, 20 years that, hey, we're going to see all of this speed from the SEC. We struggle in the conferences. You know, we're sort of looked at as a bunch of cheese eaters. Big guys don't have the speed to match up with the SEC, but really, on paper, this looks to be a very, very good matchup.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a great matchup, and I think the perception that the Big Ten doesn't have speed is sort of a myth, and all you need to do is watch Denard Robinson play and realize there's some speed in the Big Ten. And really, historically, you go back, the Big Ten has handled himself pretty well against the SEC opponents. I really think everything changed with that championship game in 2006 between Florida and Ohio State. I think prior to that, I think the Big Ten may have won the majority of the games against the SEC. But since that game, it seems like the SEC has taken control of the rivalry. I know the last couple of years they certainly have. I know the last time Michigan came to the Sunshine State, it wasn't a very good trip. They got bought pretty good by Mississippi State, but certainly I think you go back to last year with Michigan State beating Georgia. That was a big win for the Big Ten, of course. But South Carolina did beat Nebraska in the Capital One Bowl. So the rivalry goes back and forth. I think for the last couple of years, the SEC has dominated, but certainly the pendulum can swing back to the Big Ten's way because they certainly got a lot of talented football players themselves.
Scott, let's talk about this South Carolina team we're going to be facing here in the Big Ten. During the season, we're very preoccupied with not only the Wolverines, but what's happening in the conference. So we get to see SEC highlights on ESPN, sound bites, and really that's it. But when you look at this Gamecock team, they are in the midst of the most productive stretch in school history. 30 wins in the last 3 seasons, including a record 21 in the last 2 seasons, and looking for back-to-back 11-win seasons, which is very impressive. This is really the best of times for the Gamecock faithful, isn't it?
It is. When Steve Spurrier arrived here in 2005, I think a lot of people had unrealistic expectations about how quickly he could turn around the program. Lou Holtz had some success here, beat Ohio State back-to-back Outback Bowls in 2000, 2001, but then things sort of slipped the 3 years of his tenure here. And then Steve Spurrier came on board in 2005. And really, truthfully, he struggled for the first 3 or 4 years, both recruiting. They could bring the quality players in, and simply on the field product as well too. Obviously, he struggled to find a quarterback that could run his system the way he wanted it. But then I think really things really changed. I think around 2009 when they started recruiting guys like Stephon Gilmore and Marcus Lattimore and Alshon Jeffrey and Clowney and Kelsey Qualls and DJ Swearinger and players like this that came on board in 08 and 09 and 010. That's when things I think really switched. I think, and really, I think it's no secret. I think your listeners understand it's really about players and about good coaching, and they finally got the players they needed to compete in the SEC. I think you've seen the results the last couple of years on the field, and I think the team leadership I think is a lot better now than it was 3-4 years ago. I think the coaching is a lot better than it was 3-4 years ago. I think Steve Spurrier has changed a little bit. I think he understands what you have to do to win in today's college football. It's not simply a drop back pass type of game anymore like it was back in the 90s when you had Danny Wolfel and Rex Grossman with the Florida. You have a quarterback now who's a dual threat type guy who can run and throw the ball, and Connor Shaw. He had some success with Dylan Thompson, who's more of a drop back guy too. But really, Connor Shaw is the main guy. And of course, they run the zone read with Marcus Lattimore and now Kenny Miles and Mike Davis, and they run the zone read on the outside with Connor Shaw. They've had some success with that. So he sort of adapted his system to what the modern football dictates, and give him credit for that. And as a result, I think you've seen the results on the field, like you said, with 21 wins the last 2 years.
You cannot question the results. Coach Spurrier, 65 wins, now the winningest coach in South Carolina history. Scott, when you look at this program right now, do you think it's knocking on the door of elite status, or it has arrived?
No, I think it's still knocking on in terms of the SEC. In terms of the SEC, remember, they're still behind. You still get Alabama, Georgia, Florida, LSU, schools like that they're competing with on a week-in, week-out basis. I think right now you probably have to say that you put South Carolina probably number 5 or number 6 in the conference right now. So they're certainly in the top up half of the league, which is where they want to go. And if you're in the up half of the SEC, then you're doing pretty well. And of course, I think going to the SEC championship game in 2010 was a big deal for the program. I know they got crushed by Auburn and Cam Newton in the championship game, but I think taking that step, making it to Atlanta was a big deal for the entire Gamecock program. I think that I think their mindset sort of changed after that, and they realized they can finally compete in this league. And obviously, if you're competing in the SEC for the title, then obviously you're competing on the national level as well too. USC got as high as number 3 this year in the BCS rankings before they fell back a little bit with the losses to LSU and Florida. But certainly they've proven they can compete on a national level. And with guys like Clowney and Shaw come back next year, I think next season has a chance to be another great one as well too.
Well, Scott, when you look at this season, how it started out hot, and then, as you just mentioned, losses on the road to then number 9 LSU and then number 3 Florida, and then closing the season hot. When it was all said and done at 10-2 heading into the bowl game, did you think that's about where you thought this team would be at season's end?
Yeah, I thought they were certainly capable before the season started of winning 10 games. I know after they beat Nebraska in the Capital One Bowl last year, the goal was to win 12 games. But before the season started, we all knew that the 3-game stretch in October, home against Georgia and then on the road at LSU and at Florida consecutive weeks, that was going to be the make-or-break stretch of the season. Obviously, they played very well against Georgia, beat the Bulldogs 35-7 in Columbia, and probably their best all-around performance of the season. But then they had the back-to-back road games at LSU and at Florida. And if anyone's ever been to Baton Rouge or Gainesville, they understand the type of environment those stadiums have. If they've seen on TV or seen them live, whatever. And obviously, they're very intimidating environments. I think USC certainly hung well there in LSU. In fact, led in the fourth quarter there in front of about 95,000 fans and did well for the most part, but unfortunately didn't play very well down the stretch, and they lost the game 23-21. And then the Florida game obviously was a situation where they fumbled the ball away 4 times in the first half. Connor Shaw didn't pick up a corner blitz, got whacked and lost the ball, dropped the punt, dropped the kickoff, and another turnover as well too. So they simply couldn't hold on to the football in the first half of the Florida game, and it cost them. And Florida, in fact, only had less than 200 yards of total offense and yet scored 40 plus points. How often do you hear that happening? So simply they gave Florida short fields all day long, and they took advantage of it. So really, and then ever since then, they've done pretty well. They're on a 4-game winning streak coming into the Outback Bowl. Got a chance for the first time ever in school history to finish a year with 5 straight wins. So they bounced back pretty good, which is one reason why they've had such a good season. Our guest on the show today is Scott Hood, who covers the South Carolina Gamecocks for GamecockCentral.com, part of the Rivals family. Scott, let's talk about the South Carolina offense, if we could, for just a couple of minutes. As Michigan fans, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we just don't get to see enough of them or the SEC during the season to form many opinions. But let's talk about that quarterback position. Connor Shaw, who played, I believe, 10 games. Nice numbers, 136 for 202 passing, 67.3% completion percentage. He threw for 732 yards, 15 TDs, 7 picks, and he has a very capable backup in Dylan Thompson. Connor was bunged up, I know, at times during the season. Is he still going to start on Tuesday? Yes, he will start the game. He's pretty healthy now, but it's been sort of been an injury-plagued season for Connor Shaw. You know, in the first game of the year again at Vanderbilt, he hurt his shoulder, missed the next game. In fact, Dylan Thompson started the home opener against East Carolina, did very well, and then Shaw came back, was fine for a few games, but then sprained his foot against Tennessee in the latter stages of that game, and that injury really bothered him for some weeks, and it really got to the point where he couldn't even play. In fact, I remember Dylan Thompson came in and played in the Clemson game, so and did very well too. So I agree with you. I think they got two very good quarterbacks who can compete in the SEC level. And but Connor Shaw will start. He's the most established quarterback. He's a proven winner. He's won a bunch of games for the Gamecocks over the last couple of years. Let him to some pretty significant victories, and certainly any win over Michigan would be considered to be significant. So, and I'm looking for Connor to play well. I think he's ready. He's eager to talk in there last night. He's eager to bounce back, and after missing the Clemson game and play really well in the final game of the year, and he'll be back next year as well too. So I think USC is pretty well set there at the quarterback position.
Well, at the running back spot, of course, a huge injury in late October to Marcus Lattimore, the great All-American running back for the Gamecocks against Tennessee. So Tuesday we're going to see Kenny Miles, who had a nice season, filling in 99 carries, 358 yards. The guy that I hear a lot about, though, is the freshman, Mike Davis, who only had 52 carries during the season, but it sounds like we're going to see him a lot on Tuesday, too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I expect probably about Kenny Miles to get about 60% of the carries, and Mike Davis about 30%, and then another kid named Sean Carson, who's been out all year, you get about 10%. But Kenny Miles had a pretty interesting career here at South Carolina. He led the team in rushing in 2009 as a freshman. But remember, 2010 was the marquee rival of Marcus Lattimore. And also in 2010 and 2011 and for the first half of 2012, he didn't get a whole lot of carries, and it really wasn't a major factor on offense. He did very well on special teams, but yes, in fact, he had a very good Capital One Bowl last year after Marcus got hurt. But this has sort of been Kenny's time. I think his entire career has been building up to this one game. This is his final game. He's a fifth-year senior, and I think he's ready to go out and have a great game. But as you mentioned, I think Mike Davis sort of represents the future for the Gamecock program in terms of running, especially with Marcus's decision now to turn pro. No, Mike Davis' older brother, James, was a running back at Clemson back a few years ago and did pretty well there with the two rival schools down here in the Parnell State. So interesting that one older brother went to one school and Mike Davis went to the other school. So, but Mike is an excellent young running back. I think he's only going to get better. I think he will be the number one running back for next year, and I think Michigan fans will be impressed at what they see on New Year's Day.
As far as the receiving game goes for the Gamecocks, two receivers that, you look at the numbers, were pretty darn good this year. Bruce Ellington had 38 receptions, 6 TDs. I understand he's also the point guard on the basketball team right now.
Yeah, he plays two sports.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. Then there's Ace Sanders, 36 receptions, 7 TDs, I should say. Coach Spurrier mentioned early in the season the team didn't seem to have that downfield threat, but Ellington and Ace Sanders, as the season progressed, started giving them that, didn't they?
Yes. Bruce Ellington and Ace Sanders are definitely the top two wide receiving threats. Which is interesting, that South Carolina has sort of switched from a passing attack, which featured Alshon Jeffrey the last couple of years. He's a 6'3", 6'4" type guy. Whereas this year, there's pretty much been a small, quick, a lot of slants, a lot of those type passes, crossing routes, things like that, and try to take advantage of the speed of Ellington and Ace Sanders. And so it's small man passing attack. In fact, the top 3 or 4 receivers are all some small fast guys. So it's an interesting transition. Certainly Ellington and Sanders, those are the two guys that probably Michigan fans probably need to watch on New Year's Day. I think most of the balls will be thrown in the direction of those two guys.
Well, when I was prepping for this game, Scott, again, I mentioned during the season we just don't get to see enough of the SEC or our opponent. But when I looked at the South Carolina offensive numbers, I was a little bit surprised, especially when I looked at the record. It's 10-2, and the numbers were good, but not what I expected from an offense. From a 10-2 team. So that led me to turn around and look at those defensive numbers, and I think that explains everything.
Right.
This defense has, I think,
reached elite status. And there's only one name you need to know on this defense, and I close my eyes watching video clips of him, Jadeveon Clowney. He had a knee and foot injuries during the second half of the season. Still, school record 13 sacks, consensus first-team All-American, SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and the winner of the Hendricks Award. This guy is a one-man wrecking crew, isn't he?
He is, and and people ask me all the time. Remember, he was the number one prospect coming out of high school in 2011, and I'm asked all the time if he has exceeded expectations, and my answer is always no, because the expectations were already sky high for Jadeveon when he came to South Carolina. And fortunately, he played up the road here in Rock Hill, which is a suburb of Charlotte. He's about 70, 80 miles from campus. And I always say that, college football, to a large extent, is geography plays a much more important role, I think, than a lot of people want to admit. And the fact that Clowney grew up here in South Carolina instead of, say, Alabama or, for example, had Clowney grown up in Michigan, he would be playing for Michigan right now. If he'd been growing up in Alabama, he would be playing for Alabama right now. But he grew up in South Carolina, and that's why he's playing enough for the Gamecocks. And he's had a great first 2 years. He's an impressive physical specimen. He's got a lightning quick first step, which has really been his calling card ever since he's been in high school. And in fact, we had a teleconference with Mel Kiper a couple of weeks ago about the NFL draft, and he said that flat out. He said if Clowney was eligible for the draft this year, he would be the number one pick in the draft. No question about it. In fact, Kiper said he even guaranteed he'd be the number one pick in the draft. So you have to assume he's going to be the number one pick in the draft in 2014 when he becomes eligible. So, this guy's a monster. And as we talked about before, this matchup between Clowney and Taylor Lewin was obviously, as you know, the Big Ten offensive line. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a classic matchup. I think that's the one that the TV cameras, I think, are really going to focus on all game long. I'm really looking forward to seeing how those guys. And in fact, Taylor Lewin, I know from Ring is thinking about coming out pro, and I got to think that if he has a great game against Clowney, he can make himself a whole lot of money on the NFL this year if he has a great game. So that's going to be a classic matchup. And I think Clowney's going to come ready to play. He's been ready to play all year. He's really developed into a player. In fact, he was fairly raw coming out of high school, but he's really learning now the techniques and the fundamentals and the work ethic you need to exceed at the major college level. And since he's embraced that, he's done very well, as everyone has seen.
Well, of course, the Jadeveon Clowney Taylor Lewan matchup will be the focus. So you're right. I'm sure the cameras are going to be on that a lot too. But when you look at the defensive numbers outside of Jadeveon for this defense, 40 sacks, 119 yards per game given up on the ground, 193 via the air. Something very impressive to me is that 85 tackles for loss. Jadeveon has a few friends helping him out over there, doesn't he?
He does. The defensive line, in my opinion, is one of the best in the country. Certainly one of the top 5 defensive lines, not only with Clowney, but you got on the other side, you got Devin Taylor, who's 6'8", about 270 pounds. He's also quick as a cat, like Clowney is. Inside, you got Kelsey Qualls, who's, in my opinion, is one of the best defensive tackles in the SEC. You got Byron Gerardo. Then in the linebacker core, they have 5 seniors who do most of the playing. So they're very experienced, and they know what they're doing. They're all heavy ball players. You got Shaq Wilson, Reggie Bowen. You got DeMario Jeffrey, Quinn Smith. And then at spur, which is, I guess, sort of a similar position that Jordan Kovacs plays for Michigan.
Right.
Right. Similar type position. Devontae Hallman plays that role. Does very well. And he's a very physical player. In fact, he's very highly regarded by the NFL scouts too. He'll probably go in the top 3 rounds as well too. So this year, in fact, he may be the highest drafted Gamecock player. So their defensive front 7, in my opinion, is as good as any in the SEC, and obviously that means they're one of the best in the country too. So that, as you mentioned, that's really been the secret of their success this year. It's been the strong play. They've managed to shut down the run in most games. And then the tough Outback too, with guys like DJ Surrender, who's a very hard hitter from the free safety spot. So as you mentioned, they've done a great job on defense this year. Renzo Ward, in his first year as defensive coordinator, took over for Ellis Johnson when he left to become the head coach at Southern Miss. But Lorenzo's done a great job this year. He communicates well with the players, and you've seen the results on the field.
Well, Scott, looking ahead to the Outback Bowl on Tuesday, then we know this is a great South Carolina defense, and I think one thing that South Carolina doesn't know is really the same thing Michigan fans don't know. What are we going to see offensively from Coach Borges? with Devin Gardner under center and with Denard Robinson playing a wildcat at receiver. We're really not sure what he's cooking up for this game. That is going to be a fascinating matchup to watch develop. But what do you think concerns the South Carolina coaching staff most about facing this Michigan offense?
Oh, I think there's no doubt about it. You're going to stop Denard Robinson first and foremost. And I looking at some of the numbers from that Ohio State game, that was really interesting. Denard Robinson had a great first half, but then Ohio State sort of shut him down in the second half. So I'm sure that the South Carolina coaching staff is looking at the Ohio State game film, especially the second half film, to figure out ways to stop Denard Robinson. In fact, he's really been the main guy far and away that USC players and coaches have talked about over the last couple of weeks here since bowl preparation started. You know, they understand they have to stop Denard Robinson first and foremost, and if they do, I think they've got a great shot to really shut down the Michigan offense. Even though guys like Devin Gardner, I know, has done pretty well at quarterback. They've got a couple of good other running backs and certainly a couple of good wide receivers. They understand that everything starts with Denard Robinson, and that's really the guy that I think is really going to focus on try to contain him first and foremost.
Well, a couple of last questions for you then, Scott. For South Carolina, why can they win this game, and do you think they will?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close, hard-fought game, but I think South Carolina's defense, in my opinion, will be the difference in the end. I think I'm looking for like a 2017, 21-17 type game. I think both defenses are very good. I think the Michigan defense is better than people think, and I've seen based on, I know they're number 2 defense nationally in terms of pass defense, so they're going to be very difficult to throw against. But I think USC may be able to run the ball a little bit against Michigan. Whereas, and I think the USC defense may probably handle the Michigan offense just a little bit better. But certainly that's going to be the key of the game. I think we were talking a little bit about it. I think if South Carolina is able to contain Denard Robinson, I think their chances of winning this game go way up considerably. And I think the Michigan defense, I think the key is always in South Carolina is stopping the run first and then forcing Connor Shaw to win the game with his arm, because Connor Shaw is a tool for our quarterback, but he's first and foremost he's a runner, has a running mentality, and if they can shut down that South Carolina running game, I think Michigan will be in pretty good shape.
You've seen this South Carolina defense all year, and I know you've been prepping, looking at the Michigan offense. If you were going up against that defense, and you've seen them through 12 games this year, what does Michigan need to do to have some kind of success against them?
Well, first of all, they need to be multidimensional. They can't just rely on the run or the pass exclusively. I think if you call a mixture of plays, keep a number of guys involved, not just Denard Robinson, show a lot of different type of formations, I think you can keep the USC defense off balance, and that's really going to be the key. Because if South Carolina is able to stop the run, and Michigan's forced to throw the ball, then you got guys like Clowney and Devin Taylor that are just going to tee off from the outside as they've done this year. And once USC gets into a situation where they can just blitz and put pressure on quarterback and just rush 4 guys, that's the winning formula for the South Carolina defense. And if they get in that situation, they're in very good shape. So Michigan's got to keep them off balance and keep them out of a situation where they can just bring pressure all the time and just not worry about what happens on the back end. So. Again, that's going to be key. I think that if Denard Robinson gets going, if Denard Robinson plays like he did in the first half against Ohio State, we'll have 120 plus rushing yards, and I think Michigan's going to be in very good shape. But if the Michigan offense in the second half of the Ohio State game shows up where they really couldn't do very much, then I think USC's chances of winning go up considerably.
Well, I haven't seen the extended weather forecast for Tuesday, Scott. Does it look like weather's going to play any factor in the game, or is it going to be one of those beautiful Florida days?
I think right now it looks like it's going to be a beautiful Florida day. The next couple of days is going to be pretty nice. We're sunny and about 75 today and tomorrow, so the Michigan players and coaching will be treated to pretty nice weather down here. So hopefully, I know the first 3 Outback Bowls we've been to down here, the weather's been very nice. So typically, the January late December, January is pretty nice weather down here on the Florida coast here in the Tampa area. So I'm looking forward to some pretty nice weather again on January 1st. That
sounds great. Our guest today on the show has been Scott Hood, who is the beat writer, follows the South Carolina Gamecocks for GamecockCentral.com, which is part of the Rivals.com family. Scott, we appreciate you taking time to come on the show with us. Happy New Year, and enjoy the game.
Happy New Year to you, and we will enjoy the game. Thank you very much.
Up next on Michigan Game Day is Michael Spath, the associate editor from the Wolverine, here on the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine.
Here with us today on our Outback Bowl preview special on our Michigan Game Day segment, Associate Editor of the Wolverine, Michael Spath. Michael, happy holidays and welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. It's been a great Christmas and looking forward to this Michigan game on January 1st.
You know, when the Outback Bowl matchup was announced, I thought it was an excellent pairing. I think most Michigan fans, beat writers, followers agreed with that. But, you know, given time to study South Carolina's season, mash the numbers, and then look at their personnel, do you still think this is a good matchup for Michigan?
You know what really concerns me about this is the front seven of South Carolina is scary good. Starting with the defensive end, Jadeveon Clowney, I mean, you're dealing with one of the best pass rushers in the country. Maybe he's probably will be the best pass rusher in the country next year. But he's got 13 sacks. He's coming off a monster game when he had 4.5 sacks against Clemson in their rivalry game. And they've got a lot of other really talented players up front. Devin Taylor's a senior that plays the opposite defensive end position. Kelsey Corliss, their defensive tackle. I mean, they've got some big boys. Their linebackers are fast. They're big. They're powerful. And Michigan's Achilles heel this year, all year, has been the play of that offensive line. Has been unable to get a running game going no matter which running back they put out there. Fitz Toussaint, Thomas Rawls, Vincent Smith. But the only guy that's seemed to have done any decent job with them has been Denard Robinson when he's been running as a quarterback. But that's my biggest concern is that when I first heard about the matchup, I thought, hey, this is great. Michigan hasn't played South Carolina in 25 years, and this is an opportunity for the Big Ten to play an SEC team. But looking at that front seven matchup for South Carolina, if I'm a Michigan fan, my greatest concern is how the offensive line, which has really not played well all year, is going to hold up against that group.
Yeah, I think that is a concern for all of us. Michael, let's for a moment, though, start with looking at the Michigan defense versus that South Carolina offense. There's nothing about this offense and about their numbers that jump out at you. And let me just run a few of these down because I found this interesting. They're, of course, going without their All-American running back Marcus Lattimore. But they have senior Kenny Miles, who will get the start. He had 99 carries, 358 yards. A freshman we hear a lot about, Mike Davis, will also get some playing time. He only had 52 carries during the regular season, 275 yards. We're going to see Connor Shaw at quarterback, we think. Through 10 games, his numbers aren't eye-popping, but very efficient. 136 for 202 passing. Nice passer completion percentage of 67.3%. Threw for over 1,700 yards, 15 TDs, only 7 picks. Receivers are pretty much the slot variety. Bruce Ellington, who's also the point guard in the basketball team, 38 receptions. Ace Sanders, 36 receptions, and give them somewhat of a downfield passing game. But again, nothing about this offense and their numbers jump out at you. This looks like an offensive unit that Michigan can do well against, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And we can say the same thing every week, and Greg Madison will say the same thing every week, and Jordan Kovacs and Kenny Demons, and they'll say, we want to start by stopping the run. And when you look at this South Carolina offense, without Marcus Lattimore, they certainly lack a game-breaking running back, and the offensive line is a very good offensive line, but is there anything spectacular about it? Do they have a dominant player? Do they have an All-American like Taylor Lewan, like for Michigan? No, they don't. So I certainly think that they'll be able to stop that running game. You brought up Kenny Miles, and he kind of filled in the last couple of weeks for Marcus Lattimore, but he had one good game, where he went over 100 yards, and I believe it was against Wofford, a Division I AA team. So not someone that he really, that stands as a legitimate competition to him. You bring up the wide receivers. And this is actually my concern here, is that everybody looks at him and says, wow, Ace Sanders is 5'8". Bruce Ellington is 5'9". Nick Jones is 5'7". I mean, where's the size? Where's the downfield threat for these guys? But they're all, like you said, the slot receiver type. They're all super quick. They can take those wide receiver screens and turn them into a 20-yard gain or bigger than that. That is my concern, especially because of the fact that Michigan is down one of their starting cornerbacks. J.T. Floyd has been suspended for this game, along with Will Hagerup, their punter, and Brandon Hawthorne, one of their linebackers, a backup linebacker. But you take J.T. Floyd out of the lineup. You all of a sudden, you're feeling okay when it's Courtney Avery and Raymond Taylor, because those two guys have played a lot of football. But what happens when this offense goes to its 3 wide receiver sets? What happens when it goes to a 4 wide receiver set? Because in the past, for the last 12 games, you brought Courtney Avery in as your nickel back, and then Jared Wilson as safety comes in your dime package, and you're all set. Now it's all of a sudden, you're just talking about one guy, and you think, okay, well they can compensate for that. But sometimes changing one player changes an entire dynamic for that defensive backfield. And they've got Dennis Norfleet, and who was a running back up until 2 weeks ago, and Terry Richardson, another true freshman, playing at that nickel back, that dime back position. And I'm just going to be really curious to see how those guys, especially that third cornerback or like I said, that nickel back, handles this third wide receiver for South Carolina. If there's going to be any problems, it's going to be there in the secondary. But I think front seven-wise, I think Michigan can contain this running game without a problem. I think it's not an offense that's going to score 35 points or 28 points. I think it's going to be closer to 20, 21 points for South Carolina.
Michael, and it's another offense with a quarterback, Connor Shaw. And again, when you look at his running numbers, he's just under 400 yards. But when you talk to 400 yards rushing, I should say, for the season. But when you talk to the South Carolina folks, they say, despite what you see in the passing game from him, he is a run-first quarterback. I think that's another thing from what we've seen this year that concerns me. Watching him on tape, he's not a guy that takes off a lot, but he seems to pick and choose and really hurt you when he needs 5, 8, 10 yards rolling out of that pocket.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if you watched the game yesterday between Duke and Cincinnati, the Belka Bowl. I was, of course, have it in my college pick'em on Yahoo Sports, so I was pretty interested. And was watching that game, and the quarterback for Cincinnati had a couple incredible runs on third down, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12, that picked up big first downs, and Cincinnati went on to win that game. And I think Connor Shaw is very similar to that, and almost more akin to what we've seen at Devin Gardner in 4 games than at Denard Robinson. He's not going to rush for 150 yards in a game and run the read option and carry it 15 times. But like you said, when he needs to make a play, he knows how to make it. And actually, that's been one of the problems that he has had this year, and the reason that I think you're going to see Dylan Thompson, the backup, potentially significantly in this game, because Steve Spurrier is an old-fashioned. I mean, you think about Danny Warfel when he was with Florida, and Rex Grossman, and he likes those quarterbacks that are a little more traditional, that just get back there, take the snap, and sling it around. And I don't think he actually really cares for having a running quarterback. At least that's what the South Carolina, the folks down there tell me, is that every time Connor Shaw takes off, they see Spurrier cringe a little bit on the sideline. And even if it works, he's still cringing. Dylan Thompson is more of the guy that's just going to drop back and just chuck the ball around to those 3 wide receivers. And so from what I've been told from the South Carolina reporters that cover this team on a regular basis, that Connor Shaw's going to start this game. Dylan Thompson is going to get a series or 2 series pretty quickly, maybe 1 in the first quarter, 1 in the second quarter, and then whoever plays better going into the half, they think that Spurrier's going to make a decision at halftime, and that's going to be his quarterback in the second half of the game. So that'll be interesting to watch. And Connor Shaw, a little bit of rust. He didn't play in the finale against Clemson, so we'll have to see if he is the guy in this game.
Looking at the Michigan offense versus that South Carolina defense, we talked about that at the top of the interview, but I think everyone knows by now that the reason this team is 10-2 is because of that defense, no question. Jadeveon Clowney, 13 sacks, school record, All-American, consensus All-American, SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and goes on and on and on. And he has plenty of help. 40 sacks total for this defense, 85 tackles for loss. I think this unit is right up there with the best we've seen this year, isn't it?
I would agree. I don't think it's at Alabama's level, but I think it's at Notre Dame's level, and that's not taking anything away from Notre Dame, because I think Notre Dame is probably one of the top 5 defenses in the country, and maybe number 2 behind Alabama. This is a very, very good unit, and the thing that stands out to me about it is like you said, I mean, Jadeveon Clowney has his 13 sacks, but the rest of the defensive line is no slouch. A lot of times when you have that one guy that just stands out, it can overshadow everybody else. But the rest of the defensive line, at least among the 3 of the starters, they have 19 sacks this year. So this is a group that is getting the job done regardless of what he's doing. But because he's getting so much attention, it frees up a Devin Taylor. It frees up a Chaz Sutton to make some plays off the edge. And then, if it was just the front 4, you could find a way to obviously compete against that. But they have really good linebackers. Shaq Wilson, their weak side linebacker, not very big, 5'11", 224. But I was talking to a South Carolina reporter just the other day, and he was a big Michigan fan in the 90s, and he said, you know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of Ian Gold. And if there's a guy out there like Ian Gold, who, boy, that's a recipe for disaster for Michigan, because that was a guy that in 97 and 98, 99 just absolutely got the job done, was coming off on those blitzes, and was making life very, very chaotic for the quarterback. And then you look beyond that, and you look at in the secondary, and they really like Akeem Augusta, one of the cornerbacks as a senior. He's not very big, but he plays physical, plays aggressive. And then DJ Swearinger, their free safety, is a guy that gets his hand on a lot of balls. I just think that this is a group that, from the front 4 to the middle 3 to the back 4, is as good as Michigan has faced since they played Notre Dame in the 4th week of the season.
Well, we're all, of course, waiting to see what Coach Borges has cooked up for this game from an offensive strategy perspective. Whatever it is, we're going to have to be multi-dimensional against this defense. We cannot be predictable and get away with it, can we?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think something interesting that I've paid attention to, there's some practice video that we've had on the Wolverine.com. We've seen some of it on MGO Blue. They've shown Denard Robinson lining up at center, and every time he's under center, he takes the snap, does the read option, and takes off running. And I think it's pretty clear that Denard is not in a position to throw the football. And if he can't throw the ball, I don't think you can put him at quarterback, because the moment he goes to quarterback and he can't throw the football, I mean, why would you just defend him with 7? Defend him with 11. Bring all 11 guys into the box and make him, show you that he can throw the football. And that's my biggest concern going into this game, is we saw it against Ohio State in the second half. They did not use Devin Gardner and Denard Robinson in the field at the same time. I think everybody left the game scratching their head going, wait. Did they not see what happened against Iowa? They confused the heck out of that defense. They had players running into each other. They were able to go downfield to Jeremy Gallon and Roy Roundtree because they were sucking so many players up near the line of scrimmage. It was the perfect opportunity to exploit an Ohio State defense that was worried. Urban Meyer said the week of the game that, I don't know what they're going to do, but I know they're going to do something with those 2 guys at the same time, and I have to get my team prepared for every possible scenario. And then they didn't use them at the same time, and it was almost like one of those times where you outthink yourself. Like, hey, you know what? They're so game planned for it that if we just run something more simple, they won't know how to defend it. Well, as we saw in the second half, that wasn't the case at all. And I think if Michigan, strays from the Iowa strategy and returns to the second half of the Ohio State game, I think South Carolina will have no problem shutting them down, shutting down Denard as a runner, shutting down Devin Gardner as a passer, because they're just going to be able to blitz him like crazy and bring him down. And the one thing he hasn't shown yet is that he's not really great under duress, and no quarterback is. But certainly the lack of experience there. He fumbled the ball a couple of times. He threw an interception against Ohio State. If you have those similar turnovers because of the pressure, Michigan's going to lose this game.
Michael, whatever the offensive strategy is, to me, this game hinges on one thing in the end. Can Michigan's offensive line put together a consistent and sustained effort against this very talented front? Wouldn't you agree that's where, when push comes to shove, that's where it is?
Without a doubt. And we have, very sporadically seen that. They had some good moments against Michigan State. They had some good moments against Northwestern. They played well against Minnesota and Iowa, but, outside of Michigan State, those three other teams I just named are not even anywhere close to the caliber that this front four and this front seven for South Carolina is. And Michigan State, no offense to the Spartans, because I thought they were a really good defense, and if they could win every game 0-0, or 3-0, they probably would have. But this is a ridiculously good front seven. It's going to be a real big challenge for Michigan. When you look at Taylor Lewan, he's going to have his hands full with Jadeveon Clowney, and then what's the rest of the offensive line going to do against that front four? I don't like this matchup at all. Patrick Omami, Ricky Barnum, Michael Schofield, Elliott Nealer, they've all been playing. Let's be honest. They've been. If we graded those guys, we'd probably give them C's. They've just been average, and sometimes below average. Most of the time, below average, and that's just not going to get it done. And if you're a Michigan fan, like I said at the very start of this interview, that's what my greatest concern would be: is that can these five guys block those four guys on a consistent basis? I just don't know if they can.
Another factor I think is going to be, we know on defense that South Carolina is going to be very focused, and they should be, on what Denard's doing and what Devin is doing. But we really, really could use some production from someone other than Denard. And I don't see, if we can't get it from Thomas Rawls, so a little something from Vincent Smith, that's going to make it very tough too, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's really been one of the biggest Achilles heels of this Michigan team. Is just outside of Denard, they have not been able to, generate any type of running game. And when they've brought Devin Gardner in, they really like to do the play-action pass. Well, at some point, the play-action pass isn't going to work when they don't respect the guy getting the handoff. And whether it's been Thomas Rawls, who everybody got really excited about in the preseason, Fred Jackson was hyping him up, and it's tough to say on any of these guys that they're not a good runner because the offensive line play has been so poor. But certainly, he hasn't done anything that I've seen this season to think that he's a future 1,000-yard back. And Vincent Smith, this is the kind of game that everybody respects Vincent Smith, his toughness, his ability, his desire to take on blitzing linebackers, and he does a great job. He's pound for pound, I would say, maybe the strongest guy on the team, fearless. But in a game like this where you're going against SEC speed, he looks slow out there. He just cannot, he cannot turn up field fast enough before a defensive end snatches his ankles. He can't burst through the hole quick enough. So this is a game that's not going to favor him. I mean, and there may be the one guy that if he's having a good camp or a good bowl practice, and we've heard some decent things, is Justice Hayes. We really didn't see him this year, but I think he is a wild card. If he can get, maybe he gets 5 carries or 10 carries and can do something with it, I think that's big. The other thing we haven't really talked about, too, is that I don't think we're going to see Denard at quarterback very much. I think we're going to see him more at a running back slot receiver type role. And if he's your running back, well, then you've got a really big chance to do something pretty special in this game on Tuesday.
Well, you just mentioned the SEC speed too, Michael, and special teams play comes to mind when I think of that speed. A lot of times fans overlook that aspect of the game, but in big games, it can really be critical. South Carolina's kick, punt return units, they have been very good this year, both in coverage and running the back. This is a piece of the game that Michigan has got to perform well in, especially in the punt game with Matt Weil replacing Will Hagerup. You can't understate how important this part of the game could be in affecting the outcome, can you?
No, you really can't. I mean, Ace Sanders has a punt return for a touchdown this year, has been very, very good returning those. And you look in, Matt Weil has punted this year. He's punted last year, so he's not a guy being thrown in the fire without any type of experience. However, he's a pooch punter, and it's a much different thing when you have to punt the ball, 45 to 48 yards, get some massive hang time on it because you want your coverage team to get down the field and be able to wrap this guy up. And that's a lot different than being a pooch punter and just trying to kick it about 30 yards and dropping it inside the 20-yard line. So I agree with you. That's a huge concern of mine going into this game. And in terms of the return game on Michigan's side, it hasn't been there. I mean, Dennis Norfleet, for as many highlight reel, kickoff returns, most of his highlight reel kickoff returns are him going to the left, reversing field, going to the right, and making a lot of guys miss, but not really gaining a ton of yards. He hasn't broken one past the 50-yard line this year. His average around 24 yards is very good, and it puts him down the 20-yard line most times, but has he been spectacular? Is he a guy that hits the hole and is all of a sudden gone? No, we haven't seen that at all this year. So If I'm South Carolina, I'm thinking that this is our advantage, and we can really carve out, an extra few yards every single drive in our favor because of this.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. Well, Michael, in the latest edition of the Wolverine, you mentioned that there's a big difference between going 9-4 or ending up 8-5 for the season. In so many ways, as you said, this boils down to a must-have bowl game for Michigan, doesn't it?
It really does. And I just think it's the way that you finish off the year. I mean, look at the way that they finished last year. They, beat Nebraska, then they beat Ohio State, then they beat Virginia Tech in the bowl game. And you go into the offseason with tons of momentum, with everybody feeling, great about the season that they just had. When you're coming off a loss to Ohio State, I mean, you want to get that, you don't want that to be a lasting memory, and you don't want a bowl game loss to be the lasting memory. And when you 8-5, I mean, it has a nasty ring to it, doesn't it?
It does.
It just seems like there's something massively unfulfilled about an 8-5 season, and you start to question, okay, who's the big win against this year? And really, you've got Michigan State, who turned out to be a 6-6 team, and then you've got Northwestern. What I said in my column, and what you're referring to is they only beat one team this year with a winning record, and that was Northwestern, who's 9-3, and nothing against the Wildcats, but it's not a marquee name on the schedule. They lost to Notre Dame, they lost to Alabama, they lost to Ohio State, they lost to Nebraska. If they lose now to South Carolina, they will have lost to every good team that they faced this year, and that's just. I mean, that's not the Michigan standard. That's the Iowa standard or the Illinois standard, the Purdue standard. And Brady Hoke doesn't want Michigan to be an average program. He wants them to be a great program. And if that's the case, you start looking to 2013. Are we going to be a great program in 2013? Well, it starts on January 1st with winning this game.
Well, looking ahead to Tuesday in the Outback Bowl, Michael, for me, it's pretty much like it has been leading up to all 12 games. Defensively, I expect us to play well, but offensively, I have no clue what we're going to see or how well we're going to play. What does your gut tell you about the outcome of this game?
I'm a little bit like you. I think that the defense will play well enough. I don't think South Carolina, as we talked about, scares anybody offensively. I think this will be a 24-21 kind of game, 24-17, something like that. I think it truly comes down to how they use Denard Robinson. If they use him the way that they used him against Iowa, for 60 minutes, they put him at running back and they put him at slot receiver, and he touches the ball 15 to 20 times, and he, breaks a big one for a touchdown, and he, commands the respect of the South Carolina defense, and they're bringing 7-8 guys into the box because of that, and Devin Gardner has some freedom to throw over the top. I think Michigan can win this game. If, for whatever reason, and I think the one thing I give credit to Al Borges and Brady Hoke and his staff is that every time that seemingly they've had a setback, they've learned from the setback and made an adjustment. But if, for some reason, they decide to trot out an offense similar to what we saw against Ohio State, where they don't utilize those guys at the same time, then I don't think Michigan has a chance in this game. Then I think it's 24-10, 24-7, something like that, and you're going to have a lot of frustrated Michigan fans at the end of the day. They're just going to say, what was that? And because that's what happened after the Ohio State game, is there was so much excitement at halftime, liking the way that the calls were played, liking the way the plays were called, liking the way that the guys were utilized, and then at the end of the game, they just thought that it was one that was there to be had and was thrown away. And they can't have that feeling again after this one.
No, and I think, looking ahead to Tuesday, and then remembering that Ohio State game, I think at the end of the day, it's what we've seen the last couple of years. Our hopes all hinge on the legs of Denard Robinson, and let's hope he has one more of those magical games left in him.
Well, I think that's the thing. I mean, Denard, we can debate his legacy for a long time, and we will. We'll talk about what he did as a quarterback, and did he, he never won a Big Ten title, and how many big games did he win? What's his record against the rivals and all that stuff? We're going to talk about that for the next 5-10 years. But I think one thing we saw against Ohio State on that long touchdown at the end of the first half is we were reminded of how brilliant this athlete is that when he gets the ball and he starts to run, I've never seen anybody run like him. I remember Tyrone Wheatley and Tamunga Biakabutuka, and Wheatley may be the only one in that Rose Bowl against Washington where he ran 92 yards for a touchdown, but in a much different fashion, much different kind of runner than Denard is. This guy is super fast, and he leaves people in his wake, and you just hope that at some point on Tuesday, there will be at least one, maybe two runs that are over 30 yards, over 40 yards, and you just kind of sit back and just go, man, what a treat we've enjoyed for the last 4 years as Michigan fans.
Well, here's to hoping that happens then. Our guest on the show today on our Outback Bowl preview show on our Michigan Game Day segment has been Associate Editor of the Wolverine, Michael Spath. Michael, as always, it's been a pleasure. I wish you a very happy new year and look forward to having you back on again soon.
All right, thanks a lot, Mike.
Always great to have Michael Spath on the show. He is the Associate Editor over at the Wolverine. Coming up next, we wrap it up for another week with Wolverine Quick Hits here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, the Wolverines are making their 42nd all-time bowl appearance with a 20-21 record. Michigan will be making its 36th January bowl appearance and will play in a January bowl for the 14th time in the past 16 bowl trips. This will be the 5th time that U of M plays in the Outback Bowl. The Wolverines own a 3-1 all-time mark in 4 previous Outback Hall of Fame bowl appearances in 1988, 1994, 1997, and 2003. Michigan played the AP's top 3 teams this season, number 1 Notre Dame, number 2 Alabama, and number 3 Ohio State, all away from Michigan Stadium. According to Stats LLC, Michigan is the only team since at least 1996 to play the top 3 teams in the AP poll heading into a bowl game. The Wolverines' 4 losses this season came against teams with a combined record of 46-4. Michigan's 12 regular season opponents compiled an 86-60 record this season. 5 of U of M's 8 wins came against teams with 6+ victories. The Wolverines faced 8 bowl-bound opponents during the regular season. Don't forget to become a member here at GBMW. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership today. Benefits include email reminders when a story is published or a mailbag question is answered. You also need to become a member for full participation on our message board. As a member here on GBMW, you can also take part in our popular Monday Night Live chat with E-Rock Wolverine, Coach BT, Maze Man, Doc for Blue, World's Wolverine, and our hockey guru Yostmeister. The Monday Night Live chat takes place at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Check it out. Join GBMW today and get your daily fix of Maize and Blue news and conversation. Then each Wednesday you can check out the Michigan Man Podcast. The show is now available as an Android app, which can be purchased from the Android App Store at Amazon.com. If you're an Apple person, you will find our app in the Lipson toolbox at the iTunes App Store. If you listen to the show on your Apple device, please take 1 minute to give us a review. It does help a lot. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your comments. If you'd like to have your Maize and Blue opinion heard, give us a call at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Then leave an audio with your thoughts on the Outback Bowl, on the past football season, the current basketball and hockey season, recruiting, anything that's on your mind. I'd love to hear from you. Just give us your name, where you're calling from, and then leave your message. If you'd rather send us an email, our address is the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. We welcome your thoughts and opinions on anything Maize and Blue. Thanks again to our special guest today, South Carolina beat writer Scott Hood from Gamecock Central, and Michael Spath, the associate editor at the Wolverine. Kickoff for the game tomorrow will be at 1 p.m. and will be broadcast on ESPN. Mike Tirico will handle the play-by-play, and will be joined in the booth by John Gruden. Today's show marks the 3-year anniversary of the Michigan Man podcast, and where has time gone? We hope that during these 3 years you've enjoyed what we bring you each week. Next week we'll be back to begin Season 4, and we hope you will keep on listening and tell your friends about the show. Our next program will be Wednesday, January 9th. We'll let the dust settle on the Outback Bowl and then be back on the 9th with our review of this past football season, so don't miss it. So until next week, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Happy New Year, enjoy the game, and as always, until we meet again, go Blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!